Hi, today we're going to be learning about simplifying algebraic expressions using mixed multiplication. We'll just start off by reminding you about the different types of multiplication that we've learned about when multiplying polynomials. First, we learned about multiplying a monomial by a polynomial. When you multiply a monomial by a polynomial, you need to multiply each term in the polynomial by the monomial. So if you've got something like x multiplied by y plus z, you need to multiply the x by the y, and you also need to multiply the x by the z as well. Okay, then we also learned about multiplying a binomial by a binomial. When you're finding the product of two binomials, you need to multiply each term in the first set of brackets with each term in the second set of brackets. So you start with the first term in the first set of brackets and you multiply it by the first term in the second set and by the second term in the second set. Then you go and do the same thing with the second term in the first set of brackets. You multiply it by the first term in the second set and by the second term in the second set. Then we also looked at a couple of special cases when you're multiplying binomials by binomials. The first one was when you're squaring a binomial. So that's when you're multiplying two binomials together, but they're the same as each other. So if you've got something like a plus b squared, then if you multiply it out like we do normally with any other binomials, then you'll end up finding that the middle two terms will be the same as each other. So there's a shortcut that we can use when squaring a binomial, because that will always happen. So let's have a look at the shortcut quickly. So the shortcut when you are squaring a binomial, to get the first term, you need to square the first term in the polynomial. So if it's a, you square it and you get a squared. Whatever the first term is, you square it, and that will always be positive. Then to get the second term or the middle term, you're going to multiply the two terms together and double it, because if you were to do it normally, you would find that the middle two terms would be the same, so when you add it together, it's the same as doubling it. And then to get your last term, you need to square the last term in your binomial, and that again will always be positive. Okay, so that's for squaring a binomial. Then we also looked at another special case, which is when you're multiplying binomials together and it ends up resulting in the difference of two squares. Now, an example over here is where you've got a plus b times a minus b, and when you multiply them together using the normal method, you'll find that the middle two terms cancel each other out, and you'll end up with just the first term and the last term. So again, we have a shortcut for this, and this always happens when you've got two sets of brackets or two binomials that are the same as each other, except for the sign in the middle. So it's a plus b and a minus b. One of them has a plus and the other one is a minus, but otherwise they're identical to each other. So when you get two binomials like that, then you can use this shortcut. So to work out the first term, you're going to take the first term in each of the two sets of brackets and you multiply those together. Then you don't do anything for the middle term because they would cancel each other out, so you're not going to write anything. And then for the last term, you're going to multiply the last terms in the two sets of brackets together, and this will always be negative because you'll always have a positive times a negative. Okay, so now in today's examples, we're going to be using all of these different types of multiplication. We're going to be combining them. We're also going to be expanding on some of them as well. Okay, so let's have a look at our first example. In this example, we've got 3x plus 2 multiplied by 3x minus 2. Then we've got minus x plus 4 squared. Then we've got 2x times 5x plus 1 times 4x minus 2. Okay, so let's have a look at how we would do this question. Okay, so first of all, when you have a question like this with multiple terms, because you can see over here, I've got a minus that isn't inside brackets, and here I've got a plus that isn't inside brackets. So I've got multiple terms here. So I've got a term over there, then I've got another term over here, and I've got another term over here. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to simplify each of those terms, and then we can go and collect our like terms and combine them to simplify it all the way. Okay, so we're going to start off with our first term. So if you look, ignore everything else, just look at that first term and see what you've got there. We've got two binomials that we're multiplying together. The one is 3x plus 2, the other one is 3x minus 2. They're the same except for the plus and the minus. That means that we can use our shortcut for the difference of two squares kind. So I'm going to multiply the first terms together. That gives me 9x squared. And then I'm going to not do 3x times negative 2 and 2 times 3x because those are going to cancel each other out. So then I'll go and multiply the 2 by the negative 2, and that gives me negative 4. Okay, so 9x squared minus 4. Now over here, I've got minus and then x plus 4 squared. Now you need to be careful. When you get something like this minus over here, we can only sort out once we have already squared that. And because I have this minus outside here that I'm still going to need to sort out, I need to, when I square this, I need to still keep it in brackets. So I need to still have my minus, and then I'm going to multiply out the x plus 4 squared, but I'm going to keep that in brackets because I'm still going to have to multiply that minus in. Okay, so I've got x. Now remember, our shortcut for squaring a binomial is we square the first term, so it's going to be x squared. Then I multiply the two terms together and double it. So x times 4 is 4x, and I double that, that gives me 8x. So it's plus 8x. And then I square my last term, and that is plus 16. Okay, so this needs to go in brackets because the thing outside, if there was just a plus outside here, then I wouldn't need to put it in brackets because the plus isn't going to do anything. But if there's a number that needs to be multiplied in, or if there's a minus in front of it, you have to still keep that in brackets because you're still going to have to multiply that in. Okay, so we're not done completely with that term yet. Now we're going to go on to our last term over here. Now this is an example where we've got three things that we multiply together. I've got something outside the brackets, and then I've got a binomial times a binomial as well. You should always do the stuff that's inside the brackets first. We're multiplying the brackets together, and then the last thing I'm going to do is multiply whatever is outside the brackets in. So just like with this one, I'm still going to have to do multiplication after I've done these binomials. So I'm going to keep the product of the binomials in brackets because I'm still going to multiply the 2x in. So it's going to be plus 2x, and then I'm going to multiply these together, but that is going to be in brackets. So it's 5x times 4x is 20x squared. 5x times negative 2. So remember, we multiply each term in the first set by each term in the second set. So I'm doing over here 5x times 4x, and then 5x times negative 2. So that's negative 10x. Then I'm going to do my second term in the first set of brackets, and I multiply that with each term in the second set. So 1 times 4x is positive 4x. And then 1 times negative 2 is minus 2. Okay, so that's what you should get when you multiply that out. Now we're not done yet. We still need to get rid of these brackets by multiplying in what is in front of them. So over here I've got 9x squared minus 4. Now be careful, this 4 is not what I'm multiplying into the brackets. What I'm multiplying into the brackets is what is right in front of the bracket. Now remember, if you just have a minus in front, it's not actually just minus, it is actually negative 1. So this over here is an imaginary one that you can't see, but that is what we're multiplying in. We're multiplying in negative 1 over here. So it's negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 1 times 8x is negative 8x. And negative 1 times 16 is minus 16. So that's what you should get when you multiply in the negative over there. So remember, whenever you have a minus in front of your brackets, all the signs inside the brackets are going to end up changing. So if they're pluses, they'll change to minuses, and if they're minuses, they'll change to pluses. Okay, now over here, I'm going to be multiplying this 2x into these brackets over here as well. Now I have a choice here. I could simplify what's inside the brackets by collecting the like terms, combining them, and then multiply in the next step only, or I can multiply in now because either way it's going to give me the same result. So I'm going to rather just multiply in now and then do all of my like term work right at the end at the same time. Otherwise I'm going to end up doing extra steps by collecting like terms in one step and then having to collect like terms again in another step later as well. Okay, so over here I'm going to multiply in. So I've got 2x and it's positive, so it's plus 2x multiplied by 20x squared. That gives me positive 40x cubed. Then I'm going to go 2x times negative 10x. That is negative 20x squared. Then 2x times 4x is positive 8x squared. And then 2x times negative 2 is minus 4x. Okay, so now I've got rid of all of my brackets. Now I can go and simplify the like terms. I can combine all of those like terms. But first I need to identify what my like terms are. So over here, I've got 9x squared. I've also got minus x squared. Then I've got minus 20x squared over there and plus 8x squared. So there's quite a few x squareds in this. Then over here, I have got minus 4. I've got minus 16. And there are no other constants. So the constants are all like terms. Then I've got over here minus 8x. And I've got minus 4x over there. And then I also have over here plus 40x cubed. Okay, so now we've identified what our like terms are. So we need to simplify the like terms with each other and combine them. Okay, now I also need to, when I write the final answer, I need to try and write it in the correct order so that I have my, in this case, the variable is x. So I'm writing it in descending powers of x. So I'm first going to do the term that has the highest power of x, which is the x cubed. So I'm going to be working with x cubed first, then I'll go on to x squared, then I'll go on to an x, then I'll go on to my constants. Okay, so I've got 40x cubed, that goes first. There are no like terms, so it just stays as it is, and it is positive. But I don't need to write the plus in front of it because it's the first term that I'm writing down. Okay, now I'm going to go on to my x squareds. So I've got 9x squared minus x squared minus 20x squared plus 8x squared. Okay, so over here, 9x squared minus x squared is 8x squared. Here I've got another 8x squared, so 8x squared plus x squared is 16x squared. Then I'm going to subtract the 20x squared. That gives me negative 4x squared. Okay, so that's what you should get for your x squareds. Now we're going to go on to the x's. So I've got negative 8x minus 4x. That gives me negative 12x. And now I go finally onto my constant. So I've got negative 4 minus 16. That gives me negative 20. So you should get for this example 40x cubed minus 4x squared minus 12x minus 20. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few that you're going to do for yourself. Here's the first one that you're going to do. We've got negative 2 and then in brackets 6m plus 2 multiplied by 3m minus 4. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to simplify this as far as possible. Okay, so let's go through that question and see what you should have got. Okay, so in this example, I've got negative 2 multiplied by 6m plus 2 and then multiplied by 3 minus 4m. So I'm going to start off by multiplying my brackets together, but I need to keep the product of that in brackets because I'm still going to have to multiply my negative 2 in after that. Okay, so I'm going to have negative 2, and then I multiply the 6m by the 3, and that gives me 18m. Then 6m times negative 4m is negative 24m squared. Then I go on to the 2 and I multiply it by the 3, and that gives me plus 6. And I multiply the 2 by the negative 4m, and that gives me minus 8m. Okay, so now that I've multiplied out my binomials, I need to now go and multiply my negative 2 in. Now remember I said you can actually simplify that first and then multiply over here. And in this case, it doesn't really matter which way you do it because you're not going to end up, if you simplify your like terms over here and then you multiply, you're not going to suddenly have more like terms again because you don't have multiple terms in this expression. Like in the previous example, we had multiple terms, and so we ended up with like terms from this term and that term and that term that we had to simplify. Whereas here, that's not going to happen. So in this case, it's your choice. If you want to simplify the like terms first and then multiply in, that's fine. If you want to multiply in and then simplify the like terms, that's fine as well. And either way, it's going to be about the same amount of work. Okay, so over here, I'm going to multiply in and then I will simplify, but if you do it the other way around, that's fine. So negative 2 times 18m is negative 36m. Then negative 2 times negative 24m squared is positive 48m squared. Negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. And negative 2 times negative 8m is positive 16m. Okay, so once I've done that, I need to then go and simplify and combine my like terms. So my like terms over here, I've got negative 36m and 16m, those go together. Then I've got 48m squared and I've got negative 12. Okay, so first I'm going to do the m squared because it's got the highest exponent. So I'm going to have 48m squared. Then I'm going to do my m's. So I've got negative 36m plus 16m. That gives me negative 20m. And then minus 12. Okay, so that's what we should get for question A. Right, now we're going to go on to question B. Here we've got 4a plus 2b multiplied by 6a minus 3b plus 4. Now this is the first time you've had one where you're multiplying by a trinomial. But the concept of what we do when we multiply two binomials together is that you multiply each term in the first binomial with each term in the second binomial. That same concept is going to apply here. So you're going to take over here the 4a, you're going to multiply it by each term in the second set of brackets, and then you're going to do the same thing with the 2b. You're going to multiply it by each term in the second set of brackets, and then you simplify after that. Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute for this question as well. Okay, so let's go through that question and see what you should have got. Right, so first over here, I'm going to multiply my 4a into the second set of brackets. So I'm going to multiply the 4a by the 6a. That gives me 24a squared. Then 4a times negative 3b is negative 12ab. And then 4a times 4 is positive 16a. So I multiply the first term in the first set of brackets with each term in the second set of brackets. Okay, then I go on to the next term in the first set of brackets. So I've got 2b that I'm multiplying in. So it's 2b times 6a, that is plus 12ab. Then I've got 2b times negative 3b, that is negative 6b squared. And then 2b times 4 is positive 8b. Okay, so we do the same thing with the second term in the first set of brackets. We multiply it by each term in the second set of brackets. Okay, now we're going to go and simplify our like terms. So first I need to see where my like terms are. So I've got over here 24a squared, and there's nothing else that goes with that. I've got over here minus 12ab and plus 12ab. Then I've got plus 16a, and I've got plus or minus 6b squared, and I've got over here plus 8b. Okay, so there aren't very many like terms here at all. But what I do see is that I've got this negative 12ab and the positive 12ab. Those are going to cancel each other out. They are like terms, and whenever you add the same thing and subtract the same thing, they cancel each other out. So those are going to cancel each other out completely, which means that I actually have no other like terms left to simplify. So I'm just going to write down what I've got, but I need to try and write them in the correct order. So let's just check. So I've got 24a squared, then I've got 16a, so those are in the correct order. Then we go on to our b's. I've got b squared, and then I've got b, so those are also in the correct order. So I can just write it down as it is over there. So 24a squared plus 16a. Then I go on to my b's. So I've got minus 6b squared plus 8b. So that's what we should have got for question B. Right, let's go to question C. Here we've got 10p times 2p plus 5 times 2p minus 5. Let's give you 1 minute for this question as well. Okay, so let's go through that question. So first, I've got over here a monomial multiplied by a binomial and another binomial. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply my brackets together. So the 10p isn't going to change. And when I multiply my brackets together, the product needs to stay in brackets because I still need to multiply that 10p in afterwards. Okay, now if you look at these brackets, they are special because they're the same except for the plus and the minus, which means I can use my shortcut for the difference of two squares kind. So I'm multiplying the first term in each set of brackets together. So that's 2p times 2p is 4p squared. And then I skip straight to multiplying the last term in each set of brackets together, because if I multiply these together, I get negative 10p, and these will give me positive 10p, which are going to cancel each other out. So I don't need to do that. So I can skip and go and multiply the 5 and the negative 5 together. That gives me negative 25. Okay, now I can go and multiply my 10p into these brackets. So 10p times 4p squared is 40p cubed. And then 10p times negative 25 is negative 250p. And there are no like terms there, so that is simplified as far as possible. Okay, so let's go on to question D. Here we've got negative, and then in brackets, 3m plus 1 squared. Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute for this one as well. Okay, so let's go through that question. Right, so first over here, I've got a negative, and then I've got my bracket squared. So I'm going to leave the negative as it is for now. I'm going to simplify my bracket squared, and then I'm going to multiply my negative in. So first I have to keep this in brackets because I'm still going to have to multiply the negative in afterwards. Okay, so 3m, I need to square that. That gives me 9m squared. Then I'm going to multiply the two terms together and double it. So 3m times 1 is 3m. Double that, and it gives me plus 6m, and then I need to square my last term, so that's going to be plus 1. Okay, now I need to go and multiply the negative in. So remember, when we multiply a negative in, it's actually negative 1. You can't see it, but there's a 1 there, so that's what I'm multiplying in. And remember, when we multiply a negative in, it just means all the signs in the brackets are going to change. So that's going to be a negative times a positive over here is negative 9m squared. Then a negative times another positive is negative 6m, and a negative times another positive is minus 1. So for that question, you should have got negative 9m squared minus 6m minus 1. Okay, let's go on to question E. We've got in brackets negative 2a, and then in other brackets 2a minus 4, and all of that is being squared. Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute for this question as well. Okay, so let's go through that question. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do in this question is I'm going to multiply this negative 2a into these brackets over here, and then I'm going to square it because the square is outside everything, okay? So I'm first going to multiply this in over here. So I've got negative 2a times 2a, that gives me negative 4a squared, and then negative 2a times negative 4 is positive 8a. And then I need to go and square that. Okay, so now I'm going to go and use my normal rule or my normal shortcut for squaring a binomial. So that means I'm going to square the first term, gives me 16a to the power of 4. And remember, whenever you square something, it's always going to be positive. So even though that was negative 4a squared, when I square it, it becomes positive 16a to the power of 4. Okay, then I'm going to multiply the two terms together and double it. So I've got negative 4a squared times positive 8a. So first it's negative times positive, that is going to be negative. Then 4 times 8 is 32, and when I double that, I get 64. And then a squared times a is a cubed. Okay, so for your middle term, you should have got negative 64a cubed. And then we're going to go and square our last term, which again has to be positive. No matter what the sign is, it has to be positive. And then 8 squared is 64a squared. Okay, so that's what you should have got for question E. You should have got 16a to the power of 4 minus 64a cubed plus 64a squared. Okay, now let's go on to question F. Here you've got x plus 2 multiplied by 3x minus 4 multiplied by x plus 5. I'm going to give you 2 minutes for this question. Okay, so let's go through that question. Right, so in this question, we have got 3 binomials that are being multiplied together. Now, you've got a choice. You can choose to multiply these ones together first and then multiply by the third one, or you can choose to multiply the last 2 first and then multiply by the first one, or you can even choose to rearrange them and do these 2 first and then multiply by the 3x minus 4 after that. The only thing you can't do is you can't multiply by all 3 of them together at the same time. Okay, you have to choose 2 and multiply them together first and then multiply by the last one. Okay. So I'm going to choose to keep it as it is. I'm not going to rearrange it. I'm going to multiply the last 2 together first, and then after that I'm going to multiply the x plus 2 in. Okay, so at the moment the x plus 2 is going to stay as it is. And then when I multiply these together, I have to keep it in brackets because I still have to multiply that x plus 2 in. So I'm going to have 3x times x is 3x squared. Then 3x times 5 is plus 15x. Then minus 4 times x is minus 4x, and minus 4 times 5 is minus 20. Okay, so once I've got to this point, once again, I've got a choice. I can choose if I want to first simplify what's inside here and then do my multiplication, or I can do my multiplication straight away and then simplify everything at the end. It's up to you which way you want to do it. In this case, it might be better for you if you want to simplify it first and then multiply and then simplify again. It does mean you have an extra step, but it means you have less multiplication to do, because over here I'm going to be multiplying each term here by 4 terms in the second set of brackets, where I could be multiplying by only 3 terms. So it's up to you which way you want to do it. I'm going to keep it as it is, and I'm going to just multiply, and then I will simplify at the end. Okay? So I need to take the first term in this set of brackets and multiply it by each term in the second set. So I've got x times 3x squared. That gives me 3x cubed. Then x times the 15x is plus 15x squared. Then x times minus 4x is minus 4x squared. And then x times negative 20 is minus 20x. Okay, so that's the first term done. Now I'm going to go on to the second term. So I've got 2 times 3x squared is plus 6x squared. Then 2 times 15x is plus 30x. Then 2 times negative 4x is minus 8x. And finally 2 times negative 20 is minus 40. Okay, so doing it this way means that I have more terms over here, but it means I'm only going to be collecting my like terms and combining them once. Whereas you could have chosen to first combine your like terms here and then do multiplication and then combine your like terms again after that if you wanted to as well. Okay, so I'm going to go and find all my like terms now. So first I've got my x cubed. There are no other x cubed over there. Then I've got plus 15x squared and minus 4x squared. And over here I've also got plus 6x squared. Then over here I have got minus 20x, plus 30x, and minus 8x. And then I only have one constant, which is the minus 40. Okay, so let's go and simplify. So the 3x cubed is going first because it has the highest exponent and is the only one, so it's not going to change. Then my x squared, so I've got 15x squared minus 4x squared, that's 11x squared. And then plus 6x squared is 17, so it's going to be plus 17x squared. Then over here, my x's, I've got negative 20 plus 30, that is 10x, minus 8 is 2x, so it's plus 2x. And then my minus 40 is the only constant, so it stays the same. Okay, so you should have got 3x cubed plus 17x squared plus 2x minus 40. Okay, right, now we're going to go on to question G. Here we've got x plus 3 multiplied by x squared plus 9 and multiplied by x minus 3. I'm going to give you 1 minute for this question. Okay, so let's go through that question. Right, so this one is very similar to the previous one, that I've got 3 binomials that are being multiplied together. But in the previous one, it didn't really matter which order we did it in. But for this one, it actually kind of does. Because if I do it in the correct order, I'm going to have a much, much quicker calculation to do. Okay, so I want you to have a look at the 3 binomials I've got. I've got x plus 3, x squared plus 9, and x minus 3. There are 2 binomials here that are going to work very well together. If you look at the x plus 3 and the x minus 3, those are the same except for the plus and minus, which means that I can use my shortcut for when I have 2 binomials that I multiply together that are the same except for the plus and the minus, where I don't need to do the whole process of multiplying each term by each term. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange this. Okay, so I'm going to have, I'll just put the x squared plus 9 first, so that I can have these ones together. So I'm going to have x plus 3 and x minus 3. Remember, multiplication is commutative, so we can do this. We can do it in whatever order we want to. We can rearrange them however we want to. Okay, so I'm going to be doing these two together because they're going to give me the difference of two squares. So that's going to be x squared plus 9. And then because these are the same except for the plus and the minus, I can multiply the first terms together. That gives me x times x is x squared. And then I don't need to do the x times negative 3, which gives me negative 3x, and the 3 times x, which gives me positive 3x, because they cancel each other out. So then I just have 3 times negative 3 is minus 9. So now I've got x squared plus 9 times x squared minus 9. Now if you look at that once again, we've got brackets that are the same except for the plus and the minus, so I can use my shortcut all over again. So over here I'm going to multiply my first terms together. That gives me x squared times x squared is x to the power of 4. And then I don't need to multiply these together and those together because they will cancel each other out. And then 9 times negative 9 is minus 81. So that's what we should have got for question G. X to the power of 4 minus 81. Okay, now we're going to go on to question H. So in this question, we've got 5a times 2a plus 3b in brackets minus a plus b in brackets multiplied by a minus b in brackets, and then plus 4a plus 2b in brackets times a minus 5b in brackets. Let's give you 3 minutes to work on this question. Okay, so let's go through that question. So first, for this question, we have got multiple terms. This is the first one that you have done with multiple terms. So my first term is this 5a in the first set of brackets. The second term is the minus and the a plus b and the a minus b. And the third term is the plus and then the last two sets of brackets. Okay, So now I need to go and simplify by doing the multiplication in each term, and then I will sort out my like terms after that. So over here, I'm going to multiply my 5a into the bracket. Over here, I've just got a monomial multiplied by a binomial. So 5a times 2a is 10a squared, and then 5a times 3b is plus 15ab. Okay, so now I can't do anything else with that. Now I go on to my next term. Now the next term, I've got a negative, and then I've got two binomials that are being multiplied together. So I need to first work out those brackets and keep that in brackets so that I can then, in the next step, multiply the negative in. So I need to keep the negative outside here and put my answer or my simplified version of that in brackets. Now these brackets are the same except for the plus and minus. So I'm going to be using my shortcut, multiplying the first terms together, so it's a squared, and then multiplying my last terms together, which is minus b squared. Okay. Then my last term over here, it's similar to the previous one in that I've got something and then my two sets of brackets, but in this case, I've got a plus over here. Now, because it's just a plus and there's no number, no variable, and it's not a minus, I don't need to keep it in brackets because this plus, if I were to multiply a plus into the brackets, it's not going to do anything. Okay, so I can, straight away, I can drop the brackets. I can only do that if it's just a plus. If there was a plus and a 2, or a plus and a variable, or a plus and anything else, I would have to still keep this in brackets and then multiply in afterwards. Or if it was a minus, or a minus and anything else, I would need to keep it in brackets and multiply it in afterwards. But because it's just a plus, I can drop the brackets straight away. Okay, so I've got plus, and then 4a times a is 4a squared. So I'm multiplying those together. Then 4a times negative 5b is minus 20ab. Then 2b times a is plus 2ab. And then 2b times negative 5b is minus 10b squared. Okay, so that's what we should have got for the multiplication part of the simplification. Now we're going to go and still sort out these brackets. I need to still get rid of those brackets. So everything else is just going to stay as it is for now. 10a squared plus 15ab, and then I'm going to multiply my negative 1 in here. That's minus a squared, and negative 1 times negative b squared is plus b squared, and then the rest of it is going to stay as it is for now. And now I need to go and identify my like terms. So I've got over here 10a squared, then I've got minus a squared, and plus 4a squared, and there are no other a squareds. Then I've got plus 15ab, and minus 20ab, and plus 2ab. And over here I've got plus b squared and minus 10b squared. Okay, so now let's go and simplify and combine those like terms. So first my a squared. So I've got 10a squared minus a squared and plus 4a squared. That's going to give me 13a squared. Then I've got 15ab minus 20ab plus 2ab. That's going to be minus 3ab. And then b squared minus 10b squared is minus 9b squared. So that's what we should have got for question H. Right, let's go on to the last one for today, which is question I. Okay, so here we've got 5x plus 2 in brackets squared plus 3x times 2x minus 3 in brackets plus 4 times x minus 5 in brackets times x plus 3 in brackets. Let's give you 3 minutes for this one as well. Okay, so let's go through that question. So the first term is this 5x plus 2 squared. The second term is the plus 3x times 2x minus 3. And my third term is plus 4 times x minus 5 times x plus 3. So in my first term, I am squaring a binomial, so I'm going to use my shortcut. That means I square the first term, that's going to be 25x squared. Then I multiply the two terms together, that gives me 10x, and I double it, so it's plus 20x. And then I square the last term, so that's going to be plus 4. So that's my first term sorted out. Now the second term, I've got 3x times 2x minus 3. There's only one set of brackets here, so I can multiply straight into it. So I'm going to multiply the 3x by the 2x, that's going to be plus 6x squared. And the 3x times the negative 3 is minus 9x. Then in my last term, I've got two sets of brackets, and I also have this 4 that needs to be multiplied in. So I'm going to do the brackets first, and then I'll multiply the 4 in afterwards. So I'm going to have 4 plus 4, and then in brackets, the product of those two binomials. So x times x is x squared, x times positive 3 is plus 3x, negative 5 times x is minus 5x, and negative 5 times 3 is minus 15. Okay, so that's what we should have got for the multiplication so far. Now we still have to get rid of these brackets over here. So I've got 25x squared plus 20x plus 4 plus 6x squared minus 9x, and then I'm going to multiply my 4 in here. So 4 times x squared is positive 4x squared. 4 times 3x is positive 12x. 4 times negative 5x is negative 20x. And 4 times negative 15 is negative 60. Okay, so that's what you should have got when you get rid of all of the brackets. Okay, now we're going to go and identify our like terms. So I've got 25x squared over here. Then I've got plus 6x squared and plus 4x squared. Then I've got my x's. I've got plus 20x minus 9x plus 12x and minus 20x. And then my constants are plus 4 and minus 60. Okay, so first our x squareds. I've got 25x squared plus 6x squared plus 4x squared, that is 35x squared. Then my x's, I've got 20x minus 9x plus 12x minus 20x. Now the 20x and the minus 20x are going to cancel each other out because they're the same except for the plus and the minus. So I can just work with these over here. The negative 9x plus 12x, that is plus 3x. And then my constants, I've got 4 minus 60, that is negative 56. So that you should have got for question I. And that is how we simplify algebraic expressions using mixed multiplication. Now that we've learned the concepts in this lesson, it's important to practice, practice, practice. If you haven't already got the worksheet that goes with this video, you can find it by clicking on the link in the description below. The worksheet comes with an extra exercise full of questions for you to work on to master the concepts covered in this lesson. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button so that others can benefit from it too. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you can easily find my other lessons, and hit the bell so that you will get notified about lessons as I upload them.